So this is the Khoodeelaar television channel, part A of the program in the Eid al-Fitr week. Eid al-Fitr was the 9th of April and this is the 11th of April. So there are another couple of days to go. And this one is timed at 0940 GMT, which is 10:40 British Standard Time on Thursday, 11th of April 2024. The front page of the Times is dominated by a picture of Harold Wilson, who was intermittently Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street for about 8 years, according to the reports, until he resigned in 1976 and was followed by the ghastliest racist criminal, James Callaghan. Now, whatever they say about Harold Wilson, I don't think that Harold Wilson's image, in my understanding, has been irreparably damaged by anything that they've said, including today's Times and also a big picture of his alleged mistress on the Daily Mail front page. Daily Mail says that she was 22 years younger than him. And it also says that, well, the source of the information is the 92-year-old Joe Haynes, who was the press secretary. And the mistress was the deputy or assistant press secretary. And it is 50 years after the events. Most of the times, Marcia Folk Bender, as the private lie called her, was the woman that was named, rumored, as the mistress. And his actual wife, Mary Wilson, who was a poet, I think she suffered. I'm not saying that in relation to his mistresses or alleged mistresses. Mary Wilson didn't like being in number 10 Downing Street at all. And I think Mary Wilson was a dignified person. And I think that is something that most people would agree on. Now this picture of Harold Wilson brings back kind of memories of an era where the Labour Party was almost distinguishable from the cons. And as I said, Harold Wilson came across as, well, genuinely dedicated political, although he suffered various minor rumors about the court, the peerage, and all the rest of it. Now, it is ridiculous of the Daily Mail to say that the woman that Joe Haynes has now confirmed was his real mistress was 22 years his junior. That is immaterial. I mean, look at the numbers of children, let's say, compared to his age, that Rupert Dirty Digger Murdoch has married. Wendy Wang, Wendy, whatever the Chinese origin person, is decades younger than Murdoch. And yet he was married with her for long enough to produce more than one child. And according to the reported comments by Joe Haynes, age 92, Wilson confided that he was the happiest during the years of his relationship with the mistress. He is happiest, he is as happy as he had ever been. I think that is the significant point. Now, moving away from the Wilson affair or affairs, the latest private lie, which is officially due to be published tomorrow, 12th of April 2024, shows that Ian Pissoff has lost the plot. I mean, the cover of this private lie is ridiculously all over the place. Instead, they can't make up their mind as to how to mock the conservatives. They've got 4 different faces. None of the captions or the words that they put actually stick. The other thing noticeable about private lie is the actual obscurity of the style. I mean, absolutely obscure. And when I say obscurity of the style, it means it's not only not punchy and immediately drawing attention, but it is really a product of ignorance, disengagement with the subject that private lie allegedly is writing about. For example, this Rotten Borough's page 15 in this edition, because the items are about Plymouth, Northampton, and a small borough, the Dacorum borough in Hertfordshire. Typically, the private lie doesn't follow up contextually in terms of journalism. Items that it publishes in the previous editions. I here refer to the two previous editions of the private lie, which can be numbered as 1620 and 1619. Those two items, or two editions, carried as first items in each edition relating to Tower Hamlets Council. Now, as I have said, all the councils, every single council in England is corrupt. That's a given. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that exists in the so-called unwritten constitution that provides the rare individual called a genuinely active democratic voter the option to expose the crooked council in their particular area, the borough or region. And there is nothing at all that can be discerned in the propaganda being issued by as to what difference, if any, a labor labeled government following the next election will make or bring to the corrupt status quo of the local councils. Local council corruption is a kind of consensual corruption. Consensual meaning the consent is de facto given by the local government department of any kind of government, for example. And as I've said, Eric the Pickles, the crook, so-called commissioners to deal with the corrupt Lutheraman in Tower Hamlets in 2000, the Pickles actually failed. The Pickles actually failed to define what the fuck these so-called commissioners are supposed to be doing. And as I have said, So we are discussing the absolutely useless commissioners that Eric Pickles sent to Tower Hamlets. And the commissioners were led chronologically, not chronologically, but in terms of the weightage given to each one of them, by a fire brigade's individual, the benighted Ken Knight, who came across as sexually very frustrated, and the age gap between Ken Knight and Rachel Saunders would be probably bigger than the age gap between Harold Wilson and his mistress, who was 22 years his junior. I mean, the age difference between Mick Jagger and the many women that he has bedded is even wider. So age difference being highlighted in today's Daily Mail about Harold Wilson and his mistress. For example, when Tony Blair raided Rupert Murdoch's the USA while Murdoch was away and conquered Wendy Dang, despite the fact that Tony Blair was himself significantly older than Wendy Dang, of course less older than Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch himself was. But Tony Blair's raid of Rupert Murdoch's bedroom in the USA was something that his wife, Sherry Booth, knew or must have known. Because Sherry Booth, a so-called lawyer herself, has remained complicit with the agenda of human rights violation executed in collusion with George W. Bush, and the multi-million pound, well, hundreds of millions of pounds that the so-called Blair Institute or Blair Foundation has received from criminals in the USA and other criminal countries and regimes has been received in full knowledge of Sherry Booth. And Sherry Booth is supposed to be a human rights lawyer. What an insult to the phrase. Now, when the private lie actually continues to run these rotten boroughs, it is like 50 years behind the times. Apart from Louis Casey, there is another parasite who has been allowed to be appointed permanent chief executive in the corrupt Croydon Council by the corrupt Croydon Council crooks. Who is called Catherine Carswell. Catherine Carswell, the crook, has been allowed to be appointed chief executive, permanent chief executive, despite the fact that she covered up the limited work done by the limited briefed investigator after the crooks, the corrupt chief executive and the corrupt Labour Party leadership were overthrown effectively. And private lie has failed to follow up. What this is doing, this edition of Private Lie and private lie's coverage of housing is so stupid and backward and idiotic and contemptuous of the people who are most affected by the housing crisis that it needs a whole series of editions to itemize the corrupt, idiotic, incompetent, ignorant stupidity of private lie. And the language, for example, this one, the last paragraph, housing news on page 13 of this edition of Private Lie, which is the edition number 1621, dated the 12th of April until the 25th of April 2024. This is the last paragraph. The MPs called for urgent action, extending leases on older properties and ensuring shared owners only need fund repairs proportionate to the share they own. Ministers appointed to improvements promised for all leaseholders in the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill. But as the government backtracks on the bill's key provisions, shared owners may be less than reassured. What the fuck? It doesn't spell out what the provisions the government has actually backtracked on. and how on the ground, how terrible is the crisis as experienced by the people with no housing security whatsoever. And there is no connection, there is no correlation. CARE Act 2014 is hardly ever mentioned by the private lie. And this CARE Act actually covers literally millions of people being denied, deprived of care that is legally theirs. And private lie also festers in the stupid ignorance of the duties of the local councils, for example, on critical areas like the safeguarding children duties. If private lie had done the diligent work, those girls that had been targeted for rape and sexual trafficking in the north of England mainly would not have suffered, would not have been targeted. And private lie has failed. That is to say, chosen not to name and shame the Labour Party, mainly Labour Party councils and council areas across the north of England. It has chosen not to mention the police forces, the Labour members of Parliament, the Labour councillors, who were separately and collectively responsible for the targeting of those children by the, within quotation mark, mainly Pakistani-born sexual criminals, rapists, and pimps. So when private lies and piss off is automatically given a platform on the media have a duty to actually explain why they are giving the criminal